Nobody on Kalos 7 had ever seen a human before. They had heard stories, of course. Every species in the galaxy had heard stories about the deathworlders. But hearing and seeing were two very different things. Danny Reeves stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around the docking bay. It was clean, organized, and filled with aliens who were all staring at him like he might explode at any moment. The tall insectoid creature approached him. It had a shiny black shell, multiple limbs, and large compound eyes that reflected Danny's image back at him 100 times over. "You are the human?" the creature asked. "That's me," Danny said. "Danny Reeves, maintenance technician. I am Supervisor Holith. I coordinate safety operations on this station." Holith's mandibles clicked nervously. "We were not expecting someone so short," Danny offered. "Solid," Holith finished. Danny shrugged. He was used to strange reactions. This was his first posting outside human space, and he had been warned that other species found humans unsettling. Something about coming from a planet that tried to kill its inhabitants every single day. Holith led him through the station corridors. The orbital refinery station Kalos 7 was a massive industrial platform that processed rare minerals from nearby asteroid fields. It employed workers from 12 different species, all united by the Galactic Trade Consortium. "You will need extensive safety training," Holith said. "Our work here involves dangerous materials." "Very dangerous. I've worked with dangerous materials before," Danny said. "Not like these." Holith stopped walking and turned to face him. "We process Calaxian ore here. The refinement requires acid baths. Extremely corrosive acid baths." Danny nodded. "What kind of acid?" Holith seemed surprised by the question. "The kind that dissolves flesh in seconds. The kind that burns through metal. The kind that has killed 17 workers on this station over the years." "Right, but what's the chemical composition?" Holith stared at him for a long moment. Then the supervisor pulled out a data pad and showed Danny the molecular structure. Danny studied it for a few seconds. "Oh, this is similar to sulfuric acid. We have stuff like this back on Earth. You have this on your planet." "We make it," Danny said. "Industrially. Millions of tons per year." Holith's compound eyes seemed to widen, though Danny wasn't sure if that was even possible. The supervisor said nothing more and continued walking. They passed through several sections of the station. Danny noticed that every door had warning signs in multiple languages. Every corridor had emergency shower stations. Every worker wore protective gear that covered their entire bodies. A small amphibious creature fell in a step beside them. It had smooth blue skin, large dark eyes, and webbed hands that trembled slightly. "This is Pip," Holith said. "Junior technician. Pip will be your work partner." "Hi, Pip," Danny said. Pip made a sound like a squeaky wheel and took 3 steps backward. "Pip is adjusting to your presence," Holith explained. "No problem," Danny said. "Take your time, Pip." They continued the tour. Holith showed Danny the living quarters, the cafeteria, the medical bay, and the recreation areas. Everything was designed with extreme caution. Padding on corners. Soft lighting. Temperature carefully controlled. "Your species requires higher oxygen content," Holith noted. "Your quarters have been modified." "Thanks. And we have stocked human food. We are told you require cooked meat." "I appreciate that." Holith shuddered slightly. The eating habits of deathworlders were apparently common knowledge throughout the galaxy. Finally, they reached a massive sealed door. Warning symbols covered every inch of its surface. Holith entered a security code, and the door slid open to reveal a viewing chamber. Beyond a thick, transparent barrier, Danny could see 12 enormous tanks filled with bubbling liquid. The liquid glowed a faint green color. Automated systems moved around the tanks, carefully monitoring every aspect of the process. "The acid processing chamber," Holith announced. "Even looking at the tanks without protection causes permanent eye damage in most species. The viewing ports are made of crystalline barrier material. It is the only substance that resists the acid." Danny walked up to the viewing port and peered through with his bare eyes. The acid bubbled and churned. Robotic arms dipped materials into the tanks and pulled out refined ore. The entire operation was impressive, well-designed, and clearly very dangerous. But Danny had worked in chemical plants on Earth. He had seen worse. "So," he said, turning back to Holith and Pip, "when do I start?" Holith and Pip exchanged a look that Danny couldn't quite read. "You are not concerned?" Holith asked. "About what?" The acid. The danger. The fact that exposure means certain death. Danny looked back at the tanks. I mean, yeah, I'll be careful. But I've worked with corrosive materials before. You just need proper procedures and good equipment. Pip made another squeaky sound. This time it sounded almost like a question. The human is not afraid. Holith translated quietly. Pip wants to know why the human is not afraid. Danny considered the question. On Earth, people worked with dangerous chemicals every day. Factories, laboratories, cleaning supplies under kitchen sinks. Humans had learned to live alongside substances that could kill them. It was just part of life. I guess I'm just used to it. Danny said finally that Holith's mandibles clicked rapidly. Whatever that meant, it didn't seem like a calm reaction. We will begin your training tomorrow, the supervisor said. Please rest tonight. And please, do not touch anything without asking first. Sure thing. Danny agreed, as Holith led him to his quarters. Danny couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. Everyone on this station acted like the acid was some kind of ultimate danger, the worst thing imaginable. But to Danny, it was just acid. He had no idea how wrong everyone else thought he was. 3 weeks into his assignment, Danny had learned something important about the galaxy. What humans considered normal, everyone else considered insane. That he sat in the control room overlooking the acid processing chamber, watching the maintenance droids do their work. Pip sat beside him, keeping a careful distance of exactly 2 meters at all times. The droids are very efficient, Danny observed. Pip nodded. They must be. No organic life can enter the chamber. Never, never. Pip's large eyes blinked slowly. The fumes alone cause respiratory failure in most species within 3 minutes. The acid itself. Pip shuddered. There are recordings from the accidents. I have not watched them. I do not want to watch them. Danny understood. Every species had its limits. And apparently, for most of the galaxy, Calaxian acid was well beyond those limits on the screens in front of them. The droids continued their careful work. They moved slowly, precisely, following programmed routines that had been refined over decades. Every motion was calculated to minimize risk. Then one of the droids stopped. What happened? Danny asked. Pip leaned forward, checking the diagnostic readouts. Unit 7 has malfunctioned. It was in the middle of a valve adjustment. Can you restart it? Attempting now. Pip's webbed fingers danced across the control panel. Nothing happened. The unit is unresponsive. Its motor systems have locked. Danny watched the screen. The droid had frozen with its arm extended toward one of the primary valves. The valve was partially open, and a thin stream of acid was dripping from the connection point. That's a leak, Danny said. Yes. Pip's voice had gone very quiet. That is a leak. Alarms began blaring throughout the control room. Red lights flashed. Holith burst through the door moments later, followed by several other crew members. Report. Holith demanded. Unit 7 malfunction, Pip said. Primary valve 16 is leaking. Containment breach in. Pip checked the calculations. For hours. Maybe 5. Holith's mandibles clicked frantically. The backup droids. Offline for maintenance. They won't be operational for 6 hours. Danny looked around the room at the panicking aliens. They were all terrified, and he understood why. If the containment failed, the acid would spread through the station's lower levels. The environmental damage would be catastrophic. What about manual repair? Danny asked. Everyone stopped and stared at him. Manual repair is impossible, Holith said slowly, as if explaining to a child. The chamber is filled with Calaxian acid fumes. No organic being can survive in there. For how long? Holith blinked. What? How long does it take for the fumes to cause problems? You said respiratory failure in 3 minutes for most species. What about humans? The room went very silent. Pip pulled up a database on the control panel and searched frantically. After a moment, the small alien looked up with an expression Danny couldn't quite read. There is no data on human exposure to Calaxian acid, Pip said. None. Humans have never been exposed to this substance. Your species is not common in this region of space. Danny nodded. That made sense. Humans were still relatively new to galactic civilization. There were plenty of things they hadn't encountered yet. What about similar acids? He asked. What's the closest chemical compound that humans have been exposed to? More searching. More silence. Sulfuric acid, Pip finally said. Your species has extensive experience with sulfuric acid. The chemical structure is remarkably similar to Calaxian acid. How similar? Approximately 87% match. Danny felt something click into place in his mind. Sulfuric acid. He had worked with sulfuric acid for years. He had seen coworkers get splashed with it. He had gotten splashed with it himself. It hurt like hell. It caused burns, but it didn't kill instantly. Humans could survive exposure, get treatment, and recover. I'll do it, Danny said to Halitha's compound. Eyes went wide. Do what? I'll go in and close the valve manually. The silence that followed was unlike anything Danny had experienced before. Every alien in the room stared at him with expressions ranging from horror to disbelief. That is suicide, Halith whispered. Maybe for you, Danny said. But humans are different. We've been working with corrosive acids for centuries. We've developed resistance. Not immunity, but resistance. I can survive in there long enough to fix the valve. You cannot know that. I know what sulfuric acid does to human skin. If this stuff is similar, I can handle it. Pip raised a trembling hand. The acid will dissolve your flesh. It'll burn me, Danny corrected. There's a difference. Burns heal. Nobody seemed to believe him. But nobody could offer an alternative either. The backup droids were hours away from being operational. The leak was getting worse by the minute. Halith looked at the screens, then back at Danny. You truly believe you can survive this? Danny thought about all the safety training videos he had watched on Earth, all the accident reports, all the statistics about chemical burns and recovery times. I've seen people survive worse, he said. Hell, I've survived worse. Without waiting for permission, Danny rolled up his sleeve and showed them his forearm. Old scars crisscrossed his skin, shiny and pink where the tissue had healed after acid exposure. Got these working at a processing plant back home, he explained. Hurt like crazy. Took a few weeks to heal. But I'm still here. Pip made a sound like a deflating balloon. Halitha's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. The supervisor just stared at Danny's scars with an expression that might have been horror or might have been awe. You are insane, Halith finally said. All of your species is insane. Probably, Danny agreed. But right now, this insane deathworlder is your best option. So what do you say? Want me to fix your acid leak? The decision was made in silence. Halith simply nodded. Danny smiled and headed for the equipment room. Time to get to work. The equipment room was smaller than Danny expected. Rows of protective suits hung on the walls, each one designed for a different species. Most looked like full hazmat gear, completely sealed from the outside environment. Danny found the human-sized equipment in a corner. It was clearly new, probably ordered when the station learned a human would be joining the crew. He examined it carefully. Basic respirator mask, rubber gloves, protective coveralls, safety goggles. It was the kind of equipment he would have worn in any chemical plant back on Earth. Standard gear for handling corrosive materials. Halith appeared in the doorway, watching Danny with obvious concern. That equipment is inadequate, the supervisor said. It's fine. It will not protect you. Danny pulled on the coveralls and zipped them up. It doesn't need to protect me completely. It just needs to reduce exposure while I work. This is not how safety works. This is exactly how safety works for humans. Danny fitted the respirator mask over his face and adjusted the straps. We don't eliminate risk. We manage it. Halitha's mandibles clicked in what Danny had learned to recognize as distress. Your species is deeply troubled. We prefer adaptable. The medical officer arrived next. Drenna was a Kashan, a four-armed being with gray skin and large analytical eyes. She carried a scanner and immediately began taking readings of Danny's body. Your skin density is remarkable, she said after a moment. 3 times thicker than galactic average. And your cellular regeneration rate. She trailed off, staring at the scanner results. We heal fast, Danny said. It's a human thing. Apparently so. Pip had followed Drenna into the equipment room. The small amphibian held a recording device, capturing everything on video. What are you doing? Danny asked. Documenting, Pip said. Either you will succeed and this recording will revolutionize galactic understanding of deathworlders, or you will die and this will serve as a warning to other humans. Thanks for the vote of confidence. You are welcome. Danny finished putting on his gear and headed toward the preparation area outside the acid processing chamber. A crowd had gathered. It seemed like half the station had come to watch the human either perform a miracle or die horribly. On a table near the chamber entrance sat a small container of Calaxian acid. It had been brought up from storage for reference purposes. Danny walked over to it. "What are you doing?" Holith demanded. "Testing." Before anyone could stop him, Danny removed the lid from the container and dipped his index finger into the acid. The reaction was immediate. Burning pain shot up his finger as the acid began attacking his skin. He held his hand in place for 3 seconds, then withdrew it and examined the damage. His finger was red. Blisters were already forming. The outer layer of skin had started to dissolve, but the finger was still there, still attached, still functional. "See," Danny said, holding up his damaged finger. "Survivable." The reaction from the crowd was intense. Several aliens fainted immediately. Others made sounds of distress and fled the area. Pip dropped the recording device, caught it, and then promptly vomited into a nearby waste container. Holith stood frozen, compound eyes locked on Danny's burned finger. The supervisor couldn't finish the sentence. "I needed to know how strong it was," Danny explained. "Now I know. It's about what I expected. I can work with this." Drenna rushed forward and grabbed Danny's hand, scanning the injury. "The damage is significant but localized. Your body is already beginning to fight the corrosion." She looked up at him with something like wonder. "How are you not screaming?" "It hurts," Danny admitted. "A lot. But pain is just information. It tells me what's happening. It doesn't stop me from working. That is not normal. For humans, it is." Danny pulled his hand back and examined the entrance to the acid processing chamber. Through the small window in the door, he could see the fumes swirling inside. The leak had gotten worse in the time they had spent preparing. "How much time do we have?" he asked. Pip checked the readings. 2 hours. Maybe less. "Then I should get moving." Holith stepped forward. "Human Danny, you understand that if you die in there, we cannot retrieve your body. The acid will, I understand. And you still choose to do this." Danny thought about it for a moment. It was a fair question. He could walk away right now. Let the station evacuate. Let the containment fail. It wouldn't be his fault, but that wasn't who he was. Humans didn't run from problems. They fixed them. "Yeah," he said. "I still choose to do this." Holith bowed his head in what Danny recognized as a gesture of respect. "Then may your ancestors watch over you, deathworlder. You are either the bravest being I have ever met, or the most foolish." "Probably both," Danny said. He turned to face the chamber door. The control panel blinked green, indicating the door was unlocked. All he had to do was step inside. Behind him, the crowd had grown silent. Pip had recovered from the vomiting and was recording again. Drenna stood ready with medical equipment. Danny took a deep breath, filling his lungs with clean air. Then he pressed the button and watched the door slide open. The fumes hit him immediately. Even through the respirator, he could feel the acid in the air. His eyes started watering. His exposed skin began to tingle. This was going to hurt. Danny stepped into the chamber, and the door closed behind him. The air inside the acid processing chamber was thick and hostile. Green fumes swirled around Danny like angry ghosts, looking for any exposed skin to attack. Danny moved forward carefully, stepping around puddles of leaked acid that had collected on the floor. His boots sizzled slightly with each step. The rubber soles wouldn't last forever, but they would last long enough. "Danny, can you hear me?" Holith's voice crackled through the comm unit attached to his collar. Loud and clear. "Your vital signs are stable. How do you feel?" "Like I'm standing inside a very angry chemistry experiment." Danny kept walking toward the malfunctioning droid and the leaking valve. "There's definitely some burning, but nothing serious yet." In the control room, he knew. Everyone was watching his progress on the cameras. Pip was probably still recording. Drenna was probably watching his biosigns with growing amazement that he reached the droid. Unit 7 stood frozen in place, its arm extended toward Valve 16. The leak was worse up close. Acid dripped steadily from the connection point, forming a growing puddle beneath it. Danny examined the valve. The repair itself wasn't complicated. He just needed to manually close the valve and tighten the seal. Maybe 5 minutes of work. The problem was the acid dripping directly onto the work area. "I'm going to need to reach through the drip," Danny said into his calm silence from the control room. "Did you hear me?" "We heard you." Holith's voice was strained. "The acid flow rate at that location is significant. Direct exposure will cause severe damage." "I know. You will be burned." "I know. Danny, there's no other way to reach the valve. I'll work fast." He didn't wait for a response. Danny positioned himself beside the leak and extended his arm into the stream of falling acid. The pain was immediate and intense. The acid soaked through his glove and began attacking the skin underneath. Danny gritted his teeth and focused on the valve. Turn left. Tighten. Turn left again. His hand was screaming at him. The nerves were sending emergency signals to his brain, begging him to pull away. Danny ignored them. Turn left. Tighten. Almost there. Your pain indicators are spiking. Drenna's voice came through the comm. Your stress hormones are elevated but within acceptable ranges. How is this possible? Humans are stubborn, Danny said through clenched teeth. We finished. He pulled his arm out of the acid stream. The glove had partially dissolved, and the skin underneath was bright red with developing blisters. It hurt more than almost anything Danny had ever experienced, but the valve was closed. The leak had stopped. Valve 16 is sealed, Danny reported. Moving to assess other systems. You should exit immediately, Holith urged. You are injured. I'm not done yet. Danny turned to examine the rest of the chamber. If one valve had failed, others might be at risk. He wasn't going to leave until he was sure the station was safe. That was when he heard the groaning sound that IT came from behind him. One of the tank seals was bulging outward under pressure. A hairline crack was forming along its surface. We have another problem, Danny said. The crack spread as he watched. In seconds, acid would burst through and flood this section of the chamber. Danny didn't think. He just moved as he grabbed a container of emergency sealant from his belt and ran toward the failing seal. The crack was widening. He had maybe 10 seconds before it failed completely. Danny pressed the sealant against the crack and held it in place with his bare hands. The sealant needed 30 seconds to cure. Acid from the crack began seeping around his fingers. Danny, multiple voices screamed through his comm at once. I've got it, he said, even though he wasn't sure he did. The acid was eating through his gloves now. Both of them. His palms were burning. His fingers were burning. Every instinct told him to let go and run. He held on 20 seconds. The pain was becoming hard to think through. Danny focused on counting. That was all he had to do. Count to 30.10 seconds. His hands felt like they were on fire. Actual fire. The kind that destroyed everything it touched. 0.5 seconds. The sealant hardened. The crack stopped spreading. The seal held. Danny stepped back and looked at his hands. They were a mess. Red, blistered, bleeding in places where the acid had gone deepest. They would need serious medical attention, but they were still his hands. Still attached. Still capable of movement. Seal is holding, Danny reported, his voice slightly shaky now. Chamber is secure. The control room erupted in sounds he couldn't quite interpret. Cheering, maybe? Or crying? With aliens, it was hard to tell. Danny walked slowly back toward the chamber exit. Each step hurt. Breathing hurt. Existing hurt. But he was alive. He pressed the button to open the door and stepped out into the preparation area. Drenna rushed forward immediately, grabbing his hands with her forearms and beginning emergency treatment. Holith stood nearby, completely silent, compound eyes fixed on Danny's injuries. Pip had stopped recording. The small amphibian just stared with an expression of total disbelief. Is there a first aid station nearby? Danny asked. I could probably use some bandages. Holith made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. You just survived what should have killed you, the supervisor said. And you're asking about bandages? Danny shrugged. Burns heal. I'll be fine in a few weeks. A few weeks, Holith repeated. A few weeks. The supervisor turned and walked away, mandibles clicking in a pattern Danny had never heard before. Several other crew members followed, apparently unable to process what they had just witnessed, but Pip stayed. And after a moment, the small amphibian picked up the recording device again. I am going to need to interview you, Pip said. Extensively. For science. Danny managed a weak smile despite the pain. Sure thing, buddy. Just let me get patched up first. 2 days after the incident, Danny was sitting up in his medical bed and complaining about being hungry. Drenna stood beside him, scanning his hands for the 15th time. The burns were healing faster than she could explain. New skin was already forming over the worst damage. At this rate, Danny would be fully recovered within 2 weeks. This should not be possible, Drenna said. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. She put down the scanner and looked at him directly. Your cellular regeneration rate is extraordinary. Your body is fighting the acid damage like it's a minor inconvenience. It kind of is a minor inconvenience. Drenna made a sound that Danny interpreted as frustration. You lost 3 layers of skin from your palms. You have chemical burns across 40% of your hands. This is not minor. I've had worse. That makes it worse, not better. Danny shrugged. His shoulders didn't hurt anymore, at least. The fumes had irritated his skin there, but that damage had already healed completely. A knock on the medical bay door interrupted their conversation. Holith entered, followed by Pip and several other crew members Danny recognized from the control room. We wanted to see how you were recovering, Holith said. I'm fine. When can I get back to work? The question seemed to shock everyone in the room. You were nearly killed 2 days ago, Holith said slowly. But I wasn't killed. And the station needs maintenance technicians. So when can I start? Holith's mandibles clicked in that pattern Danny had learned to recognize as disbelief. You humans are remarkable. We try. Pip stepped forward, holding a data pad. I have been researching human industrial history. Your species has been working with corrosive acids for over 300 years. The number of recorded exposures is in the millions. Sounds about right. The survival rate is over 90%. That also sounds right. Pip looked up from the data pad with wide eyes. How? How do you survive this? Danny thought about it. Back on Earth, acid burns were common workplace injuries. Factories had procedures for dealing with them. Hospitals had specialized treatments. People got hurt, they got treated, they went back to work. IT was just part of life. We adapted, Danny said. Humans have been dealing with dangerous environments since we first evolved. Our planet is covered in things that can kill us. Predators, weather, diseases, toxins. We learned to survive all of it. By developing resistance. By developing stubbornness. Danny smiled. We refuse to die. It's kind of our thing. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Holith stepped forward. I owe you an apology, the supervisor said. For what? For underestimating you. For treating you like you were fragile. For assuming that because other species cannot survive these conditions, humans cannot either. Holith bowed deeply. You saved this station. You saved everyone on it. And you did it by doing something I considered impossible. I just did my job. That is exactly what makes it so remarkable. Holith straightened. On my world, doing your job means following procedures and avoiding risk. On your world, doing your job means walking into danger and accepting injury as a cost of success. Danny had never thought about it that way before. But it was true, wasn't it? Humans didn't avoid danger. They managed it. They walked into burning buildings to save strangers. They dove into frozen water to rescue drowning victims. They ran toward explosions instead of away from them. It wasn't bravery. Exactly. It was just how humans were built. I appreciate the apology, Danny said. But it wasn't necessary. You were trying to keep me safe. That's what good supervisors do. Holith clicked his mandibles in what Danny now recognized as gratitude. You are a good person, human Danny. Your species is fortunate to have individuals like you. We have millions like me, Danny said. Billions, even. I'm nothing special. The silence that followed was profound. Every alien in the room stared at Danny with expressions he couldn't quite read. Finally, Pip spoke up. Can I ask a question? Sure. When you were in the chamber, holding the seal while the acid burned your hands, what were you thinking? Danny remembered those 30 seconds clearly. The pain, the fear, the certainty that he was being damaged in ways that might be permanent. I was counting, he said. I knew the sealant needed 30 seconds to cure. So I counted. That's all. You were not afraid. I was terrified. But fear doesn't stop humans from doing what needs to be done. We just do it anyway. Pip wrote something on the data pad. I am including this in my research paper. The title is Deathworld Labor Practices, a Study of Human Industrial Resilience. Catchy. I thought so. Another knock at the door. A crew member Danny didn't recognize entered and handed a data pad to Holith. The supervisor read it quickly, then looked up at Danny with an unreadable expression. What is it? Danny asked. A transmission from Galactic Trade Consortium headquarters, Holith said. They received our report about the acid chamber incident. They want a full briefing. Okay. They also want to know if humans would be willing to assist with other hazardous industrial situations across the consortium. Danny blinked. Other situations? Apparently, there are many stations dealing with conditions that are considered too dangerous for organic workers. Radiation leaks, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures. Holith paused. They want to know if humans can help. Danny thought about all the humans he knew back on Earth. The miners who worked underground in crushing darkness. The firefighters who walked into infernos. The deep-sea divers who descended into pressures that would kill most beings instantly. Yeah, he said. I think we can help. Holith nodded slowly. Then perhaps we should arrange a meeting. Because human Danny, I believe your species is about to become very popular. Danny leaned back in his bed and smiled. All he had done was fix an acid leak. And somehow, that had changed everything. 3 months changed everything. Danny stood in the observation lounge of Kalos 7, watching through the massive window as a transport shuttle approached the station. The shuttle carried 12 new arrivals, all of them human. Behind him, Pip was updating data on a portable terminal. The small amphibian had become Danny's unofficial assistant, shadowing him everywhere and documenting everything he did. The new team includes specialists in radiation handling, extreme temperature operations, and toxic atmosphere navigation, Pip reported. The consortium selected them from over 2,000 human volunteers. 2,000. Apparently, many humans wanted to, quote, see what the fuss was about. Pip looked up from the terminal. Your species is very strange. We prefer curious. The door to the observation lounge opened, and Holith entered. The supervisor had changed in the past 3 months. Where once there had been nervous clicking and constant worry, there was now a calm confidence. The shuttle will dock in 15 minutes, Holith said. Are you ready to welcome them? Born ready. Holith's mandibles clicked in amusement. Danny had taught the supervisor that human expression, and now Holith used it constantly. Before they arrive, I wanted to inform you of something, Holith said. My promotion has been finalized. I will be leaving Kalos 7 to become Regional Safety Coordinator for this entire sector. Danny smiled. Congratulations. You earned it. I earned it because of you. Holith stepped closer, compound eyes reflecting the starlight from the window. Your actions in the acid chamber did more than save this station. They changed how the entire consortium views human capabilities. And I was fortunate enough to be the one who documented it. You took a chance on me when nobody else would. You took a chance on an acid bath when nobody else could. Holith bowed. I will always be grateful for what you did. And I will spend the rest of my career advocating for human integration in hazardous industrial settings. Danny didn't know what to say. 3 months ago, he had been just another maintenance technician looking for work. Now he was apparently some kind of symbol. It was a lot to process. There is one more thing, Holith said. A message arrived this morning from a station on the other side of the sector. They are experiencing a radiation leak in their power core. Their automated systems have failed, and organic workers cannot survive the exposure levels. How bad is it? Fatal within seconds for most species. Their reactor will go critical within 72 hours. Danny nodded slowly. They're asking for human help. They are asking specifically for you. The transport shuttle docked with a gentle thump. Through the window, Danny could see the airlock extending to connect with the station. I'll need a team, Danny said. You will have one. 3 of the arriving humans have extensive experience with nuclear systems. They volunteered for exactly this type of situation. Danny turned to face Holith directly. Why do they want me specifically? Any human with the right training could handle a radiation leak. Holith considered the question for a moment. Because you have become a symbol. When other stations hear about humans doing impossible things, they want to believe it's true. Sending Danny Reeves proves that it is. That's a lot of pressure. You are human. You seem to thrive under pressure. Danny couldn't argue with that. The airlock opened, and the new arrivals began entering the station. Danny watched them through the observation lounge window. 12 humans, all wearing the confident expressions of people who knew exactly what they were walking into. They were firefighters and nuclear technicians and deep-sea divers and mine rescue specialists. They were the people who ran toward danger while everyone else ran away. They were his people. Pip appeared at Danny's elbow. I would like to accompany you to the radiation station. It's dangerous, Pip, even for humans. I know, but someone needs to document what happens. And I have become. Pip paused, searching for the right word. Invested in your story. Danny looked down at his small friend. Pip had started this journey terrified of humans. Now the little amphibian was volunteering to follow one into a radioactive reactor. Okay, Danny said. But you stay in the safe zone. No heroics. Heroics are for humans, Pip agreed. I will observe from a distance. The new arrivals reached the observation lounge. They filed in one by one, each of them nodding respectfully to Danny as they passed. These were experienced professionals who had traveled across the galaxy because they heard a human had walked into an acid bath and lived. Now they wanted to prove they could do the same. One of them, a tall woman with graying hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. "You're Danny Reeves?" "That's me. I'm Ruth. Spent 30 years working nuclear cleanup on Earth." She extended her hand. "Heard you started something big out here." Danny shook her hand. "I just fixed a leak. That's how it always starts." Ruth smiled. One person does something impossible. Then everyone else realizes maybe it's not so impossible after all. Danny looked around the observation lounge. At Holith, who had trusted him when logic said not to. At Pip, who had overcome fear to become a friend. At Ruth and the other humans, who had traveled light years to continue what he had started. 3 months ago, he had been just a maintenance technician with some burned scars. Now he was part of something bigger. "So," Ruth said, "I hear there's a radiation leak that needs fixing?" Danny grinned. "There's always something that needs fixing. That's why they called us." "Then let's get to work." The humans moved toward the door, ready to face whatever the galaxy threw at them. Behind them, Pip hurried to keep up, already recording on the portable terminal. Holith watched them go, mandibles clicking in a pattern that Danny now recognized as pride. In a galaxy of fragile species, the deathworlders had found their purpose. Not through weapons or war, but through willingness. The willingness to walk into danger, do the job, and ask what was for dinner afterward. Danny Reeves led the way toward the shuttle bay. There was work to be done.